A tiny Romanian electric car called the Dacia Hipster just showed up out of nowhere, and the entire automotive industry is losing its mind. This thing costs less than a used Honda Civic, runs entirely on electricity, and somehow has Tesla engineers paying attention. But here's what nobody's talking about. Dacia isn't some scrappy startup with big dreams and no money. They're owned by Renault. They sold almost 700,000 cars last year, and they've been quietly building a reputation for making vehicles so cheap and reliable that half of Europe drives them. Digging into everything from how this bizarre little car actually works, to whether it'll ever leave the concept stage, to why companies like Tesla and BYD are suddenly sweating about a vehicle that looks like it was designed by someone who really hates door handles. The company nobody knew. Dacia started in 1966 in Romania with one simple goal: make cars cheap enough that normal families could actually afford them. This wasn't about luxury or speed or impressing your neighbors. It was pure transportation. Get from point A to point B without your wallet crying. For decades, they churned out basic vehicles that did exactly that. Nothing fancy, just cars that worked. Then, in 1999, something huge happened. Renault, the massive French automaker, bought Dacia and immediately saw what everyone else missed. There was a gigantic market of people who wanted reliable cars, but couldn't drop 30,000 euros on something shiny. Renault gave Dacia better technology and modern designs, but kept the core identity intact. Cheap, simple, durable, the formula worked like crazy. In 2004, Dacia launched the Logan sedan, and it absolutely exploded across Europe. People loved it because it cost half what other sedans did but lasted just as long. Then came the Sandero hatchback, which became one of Europe's best-selling budget cars. And the Duster SUV completely disrupted the market by proving you could have a solid off-road vehicle without selling a kidney. Fast forward to 2024 and Dacia sold 670,000 vehicles worldwide. Their market share in Europe sits between 4 and 5%, which sounds small until you realize they're competing against giants like Volkswagen and Toyota. The secret sauce has always been the same: give people exactly what they need and charge them way less than everyone else. No heated steering wheels, no massaging seats, just a car that starts every morning and doesn't break down. So when Dacia announced they were making an electric concept car, the whole industry paid attention, because if anyone could crack the code on affordable EVs, it was the company that already mastered affordable everything else. The Hipster arrives. Dacia unveiled the Hipster concept in 2025, and immediately everyone had the same reaction. Wait, where are the door handles? The car is tiny, boxy, and aggressively minimalist. It measures about 3 meters long, 1.55 meters wide, and 1.53 meters tall. For comparison, a smart car is bigger, but Dacia did something wild here. Instead of trying to cram a million features into a small package, they went the opposite direction. They stripped out everything that wasn't absolutely necessary. No touchscreen dashboard, no fancy speaker system, no traditional door handles, just fabric straps you pulled to open the doors. It sounds insane, but there's method to the madness. Every feature you remove drops the manufacturing cost. Every kilogram you shave off the weight improves efficiency. Dacia designed the Hipster specifically for crowded European cities, where parking is a nightmare and most people drive less than 30 kilometers a day. The exterior looks like someone asked a minimalist designer to draw a car using only straight lines and right angles. It's not trying to be pretty, it's trying to be practical and cheap to produce. The interior follows the same philosophy. The seats are made from lightweight, durable materials, no leather, no premium fabric, just functional seating that gets the job done. The dashboard is bare bones. You've got the essentials like a speedometer and battery indicator, but that's about it. Some critics called it depressing. Dacia called it honest. The real genius shows up when you look at the numbers. By keeping everything simple and light, the Hipster weighs about 20% less than Dacia's current electric car, the Spring EV. Less weight means you need less battery power to move the car. Less battery power means lower costs. Lower costs mean normal people can actually afford it. Dacia estimates the production version could sell for under 10,000 euros. That's cheaper than most used cars. The big question everyone kept asking was whether this stripped-down approach would actually work, or if people would just feel like they were driving a golf cart with doors. The battery gamble. Here's where things get technical, but stay with me because this is the part that has Tesla worried. The Hipster uses lithium iron phosphate batteries, the same LFP technology that Dacia recently put in the updated Spring EV. LFP batteries are having a moment right now because they solve some massive problems. They're cheaper than traditional lithium-ion batteries. They last longer. They don't catch fire as easily. And they handle charging cycles way better. Chinese companies like BYD have been using LFP batteries for years and absolutely dominating the affordable EV market. Now Dacia is bringing that same approach to Europe. The exact battery size hasn't been confirmed, but experts think the Hipster packs somewhere between 25 and 30 kilowatt hours. That's tiny compared to something like a Tesla Model 3, which has a 60 kilowatt-hour battery. But remember, the Hipster weighs way less and is designed for short city trips, not cross-country road trips. With that small battery, Dacia claims the car can go about 150 kilometers on a single charge. That's roughly 93 miles. Is that enough? For city driving? Absolutely. The average European drives less than 40 kilometers per day. You could go 3 or 4 days without charging. For highway trips or long commutes, this car is useless. But Dacia isn't trying to replace highway cars. They're targeting the massive group of people who just need to get to work, drop kids at school, and run errands around town. Charging time is surprisingly reasonable. Plug it into a standard home charger, and you're looking at 3 to 4 hours for a full charge. Use a fast charger, and you can get 80 kilometers of range in about 30 minutes. That's just enough time to grab coffee and check your phone. The electric motor puts out somewhere between 35 and 45 kilowatts, which translates to about 50 to 60 horsepower. That sounds pathetic until you remember this car weighs almost nothing and has a top speed around 90 kilometers per hour. It's not going to win any races, but it'll keep up with city traffic just fine. Dacia also threw in regenerative braking, which captures energy when you slow down and feeds it back into the battery. This is standard tech in expensive EVs, but seeing it in a budget car is impressive. Every little bit of efficiency matters when you're working with a small battery. The whole setup is designed around one principle: do more with less. Less battery, less weight, less cost, but somehow still deliver a functional electric car that real people can actually afford. The Renault Master Plan. To understand why the Hipster exists, you need to understand what Renault Group is doing behind the scenes. Renault owns Dacia, and they've been quietly orchestrating one of the biggest strategic shifts in the automotive industry. In 2023, Renault announced a transformation plan called Renaulution. The goal was simple: stop trying to compete with everyone on everything, and instead dominate specific niches. They split their electric vehicle strategy into 2 lanes. Renault brand focuses on premium family EVs with all the bells and whistles. Dacia focuses on affordable, no-frills electric cars for people on budgets. This matters because most automakers are chasing the same wealthy customers who can drop 50,000 euros on a car. Renault looked at that crowd and said, "No thanks, we're going after everyone else." The numbers back up this strategy. Electric cars currently make up about 12% of new car sales in Europe, but that number is growing fast. Governments are pushing hard for EV adoption with subsidies and emissions regulations. The problem is, most EVs are still too expensive for average buyers. Renault saw a massive opportunity: build electric cars that normal people can actually afford and capture a market segment that barely exists right now. They're already executing this plan with 2 new models. The Renault 5 EV launches in 2025 as a small retro-styled hatchback priced under 25,000 euros. The Renault 4 EV follows shortly after as a slightly bigger crossover with the same affordable approach. Both cars use the same platform technology and LFP batteries that will eventually power vehicles like the Dacia Hipster. Renault is also building battery production capacity inside Europe to cut costs and reduce dependence on Chinese suppliers. They partnered with companies like Verkor and LG Energy Solution to set up local battery plants. The plan is to drop battery costs by 40% over the next few years. That's the difference between an EV that costs 30,000 euros and one that costs 18,000 euros. Dacia fits perfectly into this strategy as the ultra-budget brand. While Renault makes nice family cars, Dacia makes the absolute cheapest functional vehicles possible. The Hipster concept is Renault testing the waters to see if European buyers will accept a truly stripped-down electric car. If it works, Dacia could flood the market with affordable EVs and completely change the game. The genius of this approach is that Renault isn't trying to beat Tesla at being Tesla. They're creating an entirely different category. Tesla makes aspirational cars for people who want cutting-edge technology. Dacia makes practical cars for people who want reliable transportation without the massive price tag. It's not about being better, it's about being different. The competition freakout. So who should actually be worried about a tiny Romanian car that costs less than a decent vacation? More companies than you'd think. Let's start with Tesla. Elon Musk has been talking about a cheaper Model 2 for years. The idea is to build something around $25,000 to compete with affordable EVs from China. But progress has been slow and that model keeps getting delayed. Meanwhile, Dacia is about to potentially drop a 10,000 euro EV on the European market. Tesla's cheapest car, the Model 3, starts at 42,000 euros in Europe. That's more than 4 times the expected price of a production hipster. Sure, the Model 3 is way nicer with more range, more power, and actual door handles. But there's a huge group of buyers who don't care about any of that. They just want cheap electric transportation. Dacia captures that market first. Tesla loses potential entry-level customers who might have eventually upgraded to a Model 3 or Model Y. Now let's talk about BYD. The Chinese EV giant has been aggressively expanding into Europe with affordable models like the Dolphin and Seagull. The Seagull costs about $10,000 in China, and BYD has hinted at bringing it to Europe. This puts them in direct competition with Dacia. But here's where Dacia has an advantage. They build cars in Europe for European customers. That means no import tariffs, no shipping costs, and no concerns about buying from a Chinese company. European buyers tend to trust local brands more, especially when it comes to service networks and parts availability. Dacia has hundreds of dealerships across Europe. BYD is still building their presence. Then there's Citroën with their EC3 launching around €23,000. Citroën claims they'll eventually get the price down to €20,000, which is still double what Dacia is targeting. Volkswagen is working on the ID.2 as their entry-level EV, but that's also expected to cost around €25,000. Every major automaker is trying to build affordable EVs, but they all seem stuck above the €20,000 mark. Dacia is the only one seriously aiming for sub-10,000 pricing. The real threat isn't that the hipster will steal customers from premium brands, it's that it'll expand the EV market into segments that didn't exist before. Right now, millions of Europeans are buying used petrol cars because new EVs are too expensive. If Dacia can offer a brand new electric car for the price of a decent used car, those buyers have a completely new option. That's market expansion, not market share theft. But it still changes the game for everyone. Industry analysts are watching closely because if the hipster succeeds, every automaker will be forced to respond. You can't just ignore a competitor selling functional EVs for half your price. Even if you're building nicer cars, you're still bleeding customers to the cheaper option. It's the same disruption that happened with smartphones. Apple made premium devices, but companies like Xiaomi grabbed massive market share by offering decent phones at budget prices. Dacia is betting they can do the same thing with electric cars. The big questions. So here's what everyone actually wants to know. Is the Dacia Hipster going to be a real car you can buy, or just another concept that looks cool at auto shows and then disappears forever? The honest answer is nobody knows for sure yet. Dacia hasn't committed to a production date or final pricing, but here's what we do know. The Hipster isn't some wild moonshot idea. It's built on technology Dacia already uses in the Spring EV. The LFP batteries are proven. The platform is proven. The manufacturing process is proven. This isn't a company trying to invent new technology. They're just repackaging existing tech into the cheapest possible form. That's way more realistic than some startup promising to revolutionize transportation with a car that doesn't exist yet. Renault Group has also been very clear about their affordable EV strategy. They're investing billions into budget electric vehicles. The Hipster fits perfectly into that plan. Auto industry experts think there's a strong chance we'll see a production version by 2026 or 2027, probably marketed as the next generation Dacia Spring or as a separate ultra-budget model. The price target of under €10,000 seems achievable if Dacia keeps the design brutally simple. Strip out all non-essential features, use cheap materials, minimize the battery size, build it in high volumes to drive down per-unit costs. Government EV subsidies in many European countries could drop the actual buyer price even lower. In some markets, you might be able to get this car for €7,000 or €8,000 after incentives. That's used car territory. Now for the reality check. This car will have major limitation. The range is only about 150 kilometers. The top speed is around 90 kilometers per hour. The interior is bare bones. There's no advanced safety tech. No fancy features. You're getting basic electric transportation and nothing more. For some people, that's a deal breaker. If you regularly drive long distances or want a comfortable highway cruiser, the Hipster is not your car. But for a huge chunk of the population, especially in dense European cities, this could be perfect. Students who need cheap transportation, families looking for a second car just for city errands, delivery drivers working short routes, elderly drivers who barely leave their neighborhood. These groups don't need 500 kilometers of range or luxury seats. They need something affordable that doesn't require gas station stops. The bigger question is whether this signals a fundamental shift in the EV market. For years, electric cars have been positioned as premium products. Better for the environment, sure, but also more expensive and more high-tech. Dacia is flipping that script and saying electric cars can be the cheapest, most basic option available. If that works, it could accelerate EV adoption way faster than anyone expected, because suddenly electric isn't just for wealthy environmentalists. It's for everyone. That's the real revolution here. Not the car itself, but what it represents. A future where electric vehicles aren't luxury items, but the default choice for people who just need to get around. Whether the Hipster specifically succeeds or fails, the idea behind it is already changing how automakers think about the future, and that might matter more than any single car.